time I come here, I'm very energized by the intellect and the energy and the enthusiasm of the students here. Professor Bala, to all of you, he's Uncle Bala. But to me, I must tell you, I became a first-time board member when I joined the Godrej Consumer Products Board. And on that board was Uncle Bala, as you call him, but he was my teacher Bala, because for a very nervous first-time board member, he's been a fantastic, absolutely fantastic. So every time I have any challenge on board governance or any of the issues relating to board relations, he is the person I turn to. So thank you, teacher, for really teaching me the basics of board governance.
So good evening, Great Lakers. It gives me great pleasure to introduce a strong supporter of Great Lakes Institute of Management from the inception, Mr. Shiv Kumar, a friend of mine, a supporter of Great Lakes, a great corporate guru, a thinker, mentor for many, and a person who is highly sought after, not only from schools of business in India, but all over the world. And I am so pleased that I know him for the past 20 years. For your information, this is his 10th visit to Great Lakes, of which 2 he has done to Great Lakes, Gurgaon, including a graduation talk along with my son, Sudhakar, about 5 years back, and also when we were in the Saidapeta campus, when late Sriram, as director of the Great Lakes School, Chennai, was alive, he was there. So he was there in Latitude, he was there in several other programs. But the most important thing I know of him is his meticulous planning, thinking, and also making sure that the entire corporate world and some of his close selected people get what is called as a PowerPoint. Generally I say, when I see a PowerPoint, there is neither power nor point. But in Shiv's PowerPoint, you wouldn't believe, he summarizes every book, not just like an abstract as somebody commercially does that, with his insights and with his comments, and sends it to some circulars. I have sent that to the entire Great Lakes community at least 5 times. And there are so many things. And now, besides his other book on reflections, he has come up with a new book. And I have seen that thing. It is such an interesting, direct thing, not only due to COVID, but due to any crisis management. As a crisis management, the country as well as the world is going through some different things, and the new normal post-COVID is not going to be the same old things. Tremendous amount of cost, waste management, actually waste that has been done where we are waiting in the airport, etc., are going to be significantly reduced. And the whole quality of things are changing. It is so nice for him to get into continuous uh, knowledge distribution. People thought it is knowledge distribution, knowledge creation, like an academic. In my opinion, he's a true academic. I always say in any business school, there should be an academic elegance blending with the business relevance. He is completely business relevance getting into academic elegance, whereas I am academic elegance getting into business relevance. And both of us have met several times in the board meeting of Godrej, and I was actually with Bharat Doshi on audit committee, and surprisingly, I was the chairperson of the HR committee, and it was such an amount of support that he gave, and I always try to sit next to him. The real reason is I want to see what kind of notes he is taking, and that's basically what it is. But anyway, leave alone all those things. He's a phenomenal person. He's an IIT Madras graduate from Bangalore, of course, and his wife, Hamsini, also is a consultant and whatnot. And after that IIT Madras, 82 or so, he went to Calcutta, IIM Calcutta, then to Wharton, and he has done several interesting experiences. Hindustan Unilever, Siba Gaiji, and the most notable things are his uh, stint with both Nokia and Pepsi before he joined Aditya Birla Group. He is currently the corporate guru and also the executive president of Aditya Birla Group. And in terms of strategy and development. And he has talked about and talking about dilemmas. Whenever I thought of a dilemma, I always think of a fantastic movie called Sumaidangi, acted by Gemini Ganesh and Devika with PB Srinivas talk. And I will just give the word and then try to talk about Mayakama Kalakama மனதிலே குழப்பமா வாழ்க்கையில் நடுக்கமா. What a wonderful, psychologically motivating Kaviyarasar Kannadasan's lyrics, amazingly sung by P.B. Srinivas. That is exactly what we are talking. I always do a lot of theoretical research. Whenever there is a theorem I have to prove, I go to a lemma. A lemma is like my amma. So when I have that thing, then the theorem comes naturally. So the dilemma is something like this. Those of you who do not know Tamil, this guy is singing is giddiness and confusion and confusion in the brain. But no matter what you say, uncertainties are inevitable. But the uncertainties has to be converted. Worrying is optional. Panicking is pathetic. Planning is paramount. And that's exactly what he's talking about. So I am so glad that there is some people who not only bring the problem but provide the solutions more. And here is a solution provider for such dilemmas. Let us give a very, very warm welcome to the one and only Shiv Kumar, a true friend and a great supporter of Great Lakes. God bless you. Thank you, Shiv. All yours.
Thank you, Prof. Do I start
Sir,
now?
over to you. You can start the
Yeah,
lecture.
will you
Shall
put
I?
will you please put the first slide on? Yeah. So thank you, Teacher Bala, for those absolutely wonderful and kind words. I've learned a lot from you in the board meetings. It was a privilege to come and be part of your book launch in Delhi when you launched your book.
That's
And
right.
it's always been a pleasure to come and speak at the Great Lakes Institute on both campuses. In fact, 3 campuses, the Saidarpet campus, the campus on the way to Mahabalipuram, and of course, the Gurgaon campus. So dear students, it's my absolute pleasure to do this for you. So I've written a new book. Next slide, please. Yeah, this book is called The Right Choice, and it's about resolving 10 career dilemmas for extraordinary success. I wrote this over the last 2 years. I originally started with about 15 career dilemmas and about 60 people to talk to. I finally trimmed it down to about 10 career dilemmas, which are typically the dilemmas which one goes through from being a trainee in some company or a junior manager in some company to being the CEO of a company. Okay, so that's what I have done. It has 24 stories of people who have been interviewed and who've been absolutely candid and honest in giving their opinion about each of those dilemmas and how they handled it. The book is on pre-order right now. The book gets delivered, I think, between the 14th and 17th once you pre-order. So please do pre-order. And this is the first speech I'm making for the book, because when I sent this book summary of what I had written, Professor Bala got back immediately and said, can you please do this for Great Lakes? And I said, any day. So this is my very first speech on my book, on my new book, to anybody in the world. So you are the first set of audience. Next chart, please. So why does one need to manage a career? Say in the past, I would submit to you that careers were managed de facto. We just joined a company and we just continued, and the company or something managed our career. That is not true anymore. You have to actively manage your career, or it's quite likely that you will drop off the corporate track. So managing a career actively is one of the most important things as you start your career, as soon as you leave the campus and get into a job. Next slide, please. So here's why I believe that you need to manage your career very well. If you go back to 1960, the average lifespan of a company in 1960 was 60 years. Today, depending on the source you are willing to look at, the average age of a company is less than 20. Some people say it is 13, some people say it's 18, but let's say it's below 20. However, the average life of a human being has moved up. It has moved up from 60 to something like 80 plus today. In India, the average lifespan is 72 years old. So now today we are talking of careers which are 30 to 40 years. Now we have a paradox here where the career of a human being is 30 to 40 years, but the career of a company is only 20 years on an average. So we have to manage our career. You cannot leave it to the company, or you cannot leave it to anybody else to manage the career for you. That's my first submission to all of you. Next chart, please. So why manage your career? If you look at managing your career, all of you have very high potential. You're very bright, you're intellectually extremely smart, you're very hardworking, and Great Lakes has turned you, or will turn you, into a fabulous product, into a fabulous person, into a fabulous manager. Now, all that potential you have in you is orchestrated, is put into managing a career. And that's why you need to manage your career in order to recognize and realize your own potential and what you're capable of. Next slide, please. So the funny part about careers, and this is what I write in the very first chapter in introduction, is a career is lived forwards, but it's understood looking backwards. It's only when you finish 40 years of age or 50 years of age, you look back and say, hey, what could I have done differently in the last 15 years? What could I have done differently in the last 25 years? And that's why whenever somebody retires, you'll find that he's extremely nostalgic about his first job, his first posting, his first promotion, etc. A flood of emotions goes through his heart at that point of time. So all careers are lived forward because we are always looking ahead all the time, but you only understand a career looking backwards. And that's why I've tried to give that perspective to everybody who's a reader of this book. Next chart, please. So there are many career dilemmas in a career, many career dilemmas, not one or two. As I mentioned to you, I've picked the 10 most prominent ones. And when we were, researching the title of the book, the cover page of the book, without my name and other stuff, the choice went to The Right Choice. Consumers picked the title of this book. And when we asked them about the dilemmas, they could pick 6 of the 10 dilemmas themselves. Okay, so when we actually went back to consumers, they could actually do that. And I've covered 10 of the most prominent dilemmas which every individual faces. Next chart, please. So what you see as dilemmas today are very different from what a middle management in a company sees as dilemmas, or a senior manager in a company sees as dilemmas. So in the next 5-6 slides, I'm going to specifically address dilemmas you go through when you are a student studying at Great Lakes University, just getting out of the university, going to start your job. These are the dilemmas in your head right now, and I will specifically speak about that. It's not that all of them are in the book, but I will definitely address your dilemmas because that's the only way I can add value to you, and that's the only way you'll be convinced that the book is good enough for you to pick and keep it on the journey as you move ahead into being a senior manager. Next slide, please. So the first point I want to make to you is think of your career as about a 30-year journey. It's not a 3-year journey. It's not a 3-month journey. It's a 30-year journey. In these 30 years, I submit to you that you will do a combination of paid jobs, unpaid jobs, voluntary jobs. That's what will happen to you over 30 years. It will not be that all 30 years will be paid jobs. It will not be that all 30 years will be voluntary jobs. Okay, it will be a combination of all three. Even when you're being paid a particular salary, it's quite likely that you will work for an NGO, or you'll take up a cause, or maybe you will start a trust, or you'll do something to improve the betterment of people around you. You'll do something or the other in a voluntary role. So think of your career like that. Next slide, please. So the first and most important dilemma in your head right now, I can almost certainly guarantee you, is money. Is money the variable by which I measure my success or my worth when I go out of Great Lakes? Now, here's the funny part about money. The Beatles said it many years ago that money can't buy me love. That's very, very true. But here's the truth about money. Money doesn't buy you love. Money doesn't buy you happiness. But money is a good antidote to sorrow. It certainly takes away some of the sorrow you have. Okay, so if you have some money, it takes away some sorrow. Now, if you look at the world today, every newspaper, everybody is constantly publishing lists of who are the 10 most richest people, okay, which are the campuses with the most salary, who has the most salary in which company, etc., etc. So all our effort, all our worth seems to be measured by one factor called money, which in my book is wrong. In my book, if you are good, money will follow you. So try to be good. If you are very good, more money will follow you. But if you have money, it doesn't mean you're good. There are many people in this world who have a lot of money, but who have absolutely no value either to society or to themselves. So money is not the most important variable. So when you are sitting for campus interviews, etc., don't look at what the company pays. That's a wrong way of looking at it. Let me also submit to you that the campus placement season, as it is not very perfect for any campus. And that's why 50% of people tend to change a job at the end of year 1 or year 2, because they're looking for something more, they're looking for their dream job or whatever it is. When you sit for your campus interview, when you're looking at what type of a company should I join, please pick a company where the culture is good. Please pick a company where your learning is going to be very good. If the culture is good, you'll flourish. If your learning is good, your CV value will multiply. And the combination of that will give you much more money in the coming years than you can ever think of. Remember this. I've seen many people destroy their careers by chasing money. Let me also give you another aspect of this. Money is extremely important, not when you start. I know many of you have student loans to pay, etc. Money is most important actually when you are 45, when your kids need to be educated, when your parents need to be taken care of, when you need a roof over your house. But however, it's funny that people change jobs in the first 5-10 years when the change of job is for 5,000 rupees. That makes no sense to me. So never get into that trap. Okay, always join a company where the culture is good, where the learning is strong. If these two are good, you will multiply your CV dramatically at the end of 5 or 10 years. And that multiplier will get you much more money than job hopping at the end of every year. Next slide, please. I'm sure this is another question that a lot of you have in your mind. Which industries are good for the future? Which industry should I join? I would say there are what I call legacy industries, and there are what I call future-oriented industries. Anything with a lot of technology in it, anything with a lot of service element in it, anything with a lot of platform in it, I think are the industries of the future. And I think being digitally fluent will get you those jobs very quickly. The old industries or the legacy industries like FMCG, like oil, etc., are comfortable, but they will not be the sexy industries or the vibrant industries of the future. There'll be steady industries. There'll be secure industries. Okay, they will also be disrupted. There's no doubt about it. But if you're looking at the next 30 years, you better start in an area where there's platforms, where there's platform digitally, platform technologies, etc., because that's the kind of skill set which is required for the future. So pick industries which are future oriented and don't pick industries which are safe. Next slide, please. Which skill sets are needed for the future? I'm sure is another question that you're asking yourself. All of you do a degree, whether it's a 2-year MBA or a 1-year executive program, etc. In my book, there are a few things which are absolutely essential. I think people skills are a given. I won't even talk about it. So irrespective of how much, machines are there at the workplace, etc., you still need to be very good with people. In my book, you need digital skills for the future. There's absolutely no doubt about it. Okay. You need what I call end-to-end digital skills. You need to be able to look at the business end-to-end via digitization. Is every aspect of the business digitized? How do we do that? Is there enough horizontal collaboration? Next, you need to have skills in the area of business models. Value now is created via business models. There's a freemium business model. There's a subscription business model. There are all kinds of business models. Last count, there were at least 100 to 150 ways businesses could generate value through new business models. The old stodgy, steady ways of business models are all being disrupted. For example, the distribution model is no longer the business model. In India, e-commerce has taken off. In America, e-commerce has taken off. The retail penetration in America was 16% at the end of 10 years. E-commerce penetration as a percentage of total retail sales. In the last 1 year, it has gone close to 40%. So 16 to 40, 24 percentage or incremental, 2,400 basis points increase. So business models will be the new game in town. Next, revenue management. Why do I pick revenue management? All of us have talked about revenue management. We typically tend to fix our cost structure for the year. We tend to fix our selling price for the year. And then we say we are launching innovation and this is the price, this is how we'll manage revenue. But that's going to undergo dramatic change if it's not already happening right now. The e-commerce boys change price almost every day. They go by what we call surge pricing, okay, which is what Uber uses, which is what the airlines use. Whenever there's demand for a product, good, or service, the price goes up. When there's less demand, they cut the price to flog the inventory. So when your biggest competitor in a channel which is e-commerce is managing his revenue by the hour, then you as a company need to be extremely skillful in managing your revenue management. And that's why I believe digital business models revenue management will be absolutely critical, front and center in terms of skill sets required for the future. Next slide, please. Next question, which a number of you have, how long should I stay in a job? I personally believe a number of young people, whether it's engineers or MBAs, etc., have what I call ants in the pants. We quickly want to leave the current job thinking that the grass is greener on the other side. My submission to you, if you do not spend 3 to 5 years in a company, you will not learn anything and neither will you contribute anything. So changing jobs every year might give you an extra increase in salary, but it won't give you any experience. And before long, you'll be in trouble. I remember when I was in Nokia, I was interviewing somebody from a technology company for an HR role. I looked at his CV. He had 8 job changes in 14 years. And he was telling me he did this, he did that, etc. I looked at him and said, how could you have done all this if you spent 1.5 years in each company? You would have just started a project and got away from it, nothing more. So I said, look, I don't think I'm ever going to select you with this kind of a track record. And then he said, Shiv, I agree with you. Now, let's stop this interview. Can you please tell me how I should manage my career? So then I said, let's go back to the starting point. Why did you change so many jobs? He said, Shiv, I wanted to be the fastest growth HR manager and wanted all the headhunters to call me every year and say, we have a job for you. I said, what happened now then? He said, Shiv, all the headhunter calls have stopped. So I'm very worried because my market value has dropped. I said, that's absolutely correct. I said, stay in a job for 5-6 years. I interviewed this boy in 2011. I said, stay in the job for 5-6 years, be associated with the company because the company brand value has to rub off on you. And then you can move after that. I'm really happy to say that 9 years later, he's still in the company where he was and he's doing very well. So now when you start your career, remember, you need the company's brand value. It's only when you come to middle management, after spending about 10-15 years, that you have some brand value as an individual. So your brand and the company brand work together at that point of time. And when you become a senior manager, 20, 25 years after you start your career, then you are a brand in your own right and companies will want you. So your brand journey starts at 0 and peaks at about 25 years. The company brand journey in your life starts at 100 when you start and slowly cuts down as you go. The ideal career is one where your brand name and the company's brand name are both strong enough and can work symbiotically to take you forward. And that is what is important. So how long should I stay in a job? I would say, unless of course the culture of the company is bad, unless of course things are really bad, I would seriously urge that you stay in a company for 3 to 5 years. That will give you a multiplier when you go for your next job. Changing jobs every year is not going to give you a multiplier. Next chart, please. So another question which a number of people ask me is, should I start something on my own and how difficult is it? With digital technology and friends, people sit in the corridor or people sit in the cafe of Great Lakes and say, let's all start this new business. Trust me, it is an extremely difficult journey. It's not easy. It looks very sexy from the outside to be an entrepreneur. But without knowing the fundamentals of a business, it's unlikely that you can be an entrepreneur on your own, first-time entrepreneur. So you need to go work in a company. You need to understand the levers of what drives a business, and then go and think of a very good idea. An idea whose time has come, an idea which consumers resonate with, and an idea where venture capital funds are willing to invest. It's unlikely they'll invest on the strength of an idea of just somebody who's passed out of business school. That's unlikely. So get some experience under your belt and then think of a damn good idea. An idea which solves a genuine problem of the consumer or society. Only then should you venture on your own. Jumping straight into something is unlikely. On the other hand, if your family is into business and then you go and work somewhere and then become an understudy to your father or uncle or whoever, learn the ropes of the business and then grow, that's a different choice. But straight starting something on your own after campus, I would not seriously recommend that to you. Okay, I would ask you to cut your teeth in a good organization, learn the ropes, learn the levers, and then move forward. Next chart, please. A very oft asked question of me, of young people is, can I be real friends with my peers and still manage my career? Aren't my peers my competitors? Okay, and here's what I would tell you, and here's what's worked for me as well as people who have done well. Never look at your peers or friends as competitors. Okay, and that's easier said than done, because you're sitting in class, you have a CGPA, you say, I'm 8 CGPA, he's 7 CGPA, I'm better than him. That matters little as you go through career and life. There are many other things which come into play. It's at campus, it matters, but in a career, that's just one part of it. So here's what you should do. When you're working in an organization, never work at a relative speed. What do I mean by that? If the guy sitting next to you in the next table is running at 40 kilometers per hour, don't try and think, let me run at 50 kilometers per hour, I'll be better than him. What will happen after 5 years is, you will go somewhere and you'll meet somebody who's been running at 80 kilometers per hour for five years. And suddenly you'll recognize that you are unfit. Your body mass, weight, etc., you're just not fit enough to compete with somebody who's been running at 80. So what I would urge you to do is, whatever job you do, whatever knowledge you seek it at an absolute level, not at a relative level. So if you're a sales manager in, let's take a technology company, ask yourself, am I the best sales manager in India? Don't ask yourself, am I the best sales manager in Chennai branch? Am I the best sales manager in South Zone? Am I the best sales manager in my company? Don't ask that question. In the industry, are you the best salesperson? In the world, are you the best salesperson? Ask yourself those tough questions. Try and be an absolute best. Professor Bala is an absolute best in the world in his topics. That's why he has that regard and that's why he has that charisma. He never started by saying, I want to be the best professor in Chennai, right? So always set an absolute standard for yourself. If you set an absolute standard in your own mind and work towards it, you can be absolutely fantastic friends with anybody. because you're not competing with them, you're competing with yourself. So set your own benchmark. Do not be relative. It's easier said than done, but very few people get this message. If you're at an absolute level, you'll always win. The point I make to people, does Sachin Tendulkar compare himself with other batsmen or with himself? He compares himself with himself. He sets his own benchmarks. You have to be the Sachin Tendulkar of your industry. You cannot be anybody else of your industry. Think like that. That's when you will win. That's when you will have charisma. That's when all your people will be your friends. Next chart, please. Next, will the company take care of my career? Unlikely. So if you look at the past, we looked at the company to take care of our career. We looked at bosses to take care of our career. We looked at the HR department to take care of our career. In the future, I submit to you, you have to take care of your career. You have to make the breaks happen. If you're very good, you work very hard, you build the institutions, then opportunity will come your way. I submit to you, hard work never killed anybody. Laziness killed a number of executives. Okay, Gary Player was a fantastic golfer, and he would practice like Vijay Singh, the other golfer. He would practice 5 hours every day, 4 hours every day. And on the golf course, he'd play some freaky shots and get away with it. And so whoever was playing with Gary Player would say, Gary, you're a lucky bastard. And Gary would say, the harder I practice, the luckier I get. So the more you work hard, the more opportunities come your way. Remember this. Lazy people will never get opportunities their way. Look at Professor Bala. He's 80 plus. He works so bloody hard. When I sent my PPT of the presentation to everybody, he was the first person who got back within 1 hour to say, hey, Shiv, I like your book. I want you to do this session for Great Lakes. The other 100 people whom I sent it to could have got back, but he was the first guy who got back. You have to work very, very hard, irrespective of what stage of career you're in. Okay, Jeff Bezos works just as hard, even though he's one of the richest people in the world. Mukesh Ambani just works as hard. Mr. Birla works just as hard. At every level, if you don't work hard for a day, you are in trouble. Yehudi Menuhin used to practice a lot. So somebody asked Yehudi Menuhin, you are at the top of your craft. You're the best guy. Why do you practice so much? He said, if I don't practice for a day, I notice it. He said, if I don't practice for a week, the critics notice it. If I don't practice for a month, the audience notices it. Remember that. So when you don't improve, when you're not working hard, you think nobody is watching, but everybody is watching you. When you slack off, all your colleagues, your company, your department knows that you're slacking off. So don't think you're so intelligent that you can hoodwink others. So the only answer is work very, very hard. Hard work never killed anybody. Laziness killed a number of executives. Next chart, please. So in summary, thank you very much for joining this call. This is about my book, The Right Choice, about 10 career dilemmas. It's on pre-order. You're most welcome to place your order for the book. Will be delivered between 14th and 18th, I think. The Kindle version also is available, which will be with you by the 14th. And it was an absolute pleasure, Professor Bala, to do this for you and your team. And I'm absolutely open to any questions that any of you might have right now.
Thank you, Mr. Shiv, for such valuable insights. I'm just going to put some questions. I've accumulated some of them. The first one is, looking back at your career as a student, when you were planning your career, you must have had certain notions on the type of career you need to have. Now, looking back today after such a long stint, how does these two reconcile, and how you would have changed things differently?
Actually, very good question. So when I was studying, at IIT, I didn't know what IIM was. It was actually my seniors who told me when they saw me editing the campus magazine, when they saw me taking part in hostel activities and institute activities. I went on to be institute secretary. They said, Shiv, you have something in you about management, and I think you should do a management. You should not go for an MS or an MTech. So then I talked to people who are going to IIM and then got to know about IIM. Then I went to IIM. Once I went to IIM, I said, I must be good in marketing. And so I read everything about marketing. I practiced marketing. I would spend tons of time with my teachers on marketing. And when I was on campus, I was the butt of many a joke of my classmates because I was writing to Philip Kotler, I was writing to Benson Shapiro, I was writing to Yoram Wind, I was writing to Peter Drucker, etc. I would have long correspondence with them. They would send me all their articles. You know, I wrote to Jack Welch. And so everybody would joke with me saying, Shiv is only talking to professors and people like that. He doesn't talk to students. Okay. But I wanted to be the best in marketing. And then I asked myself, if I had to be good in marketing, where should I join? Then it was Levers. And then, of course, it unfolded. When I started my career, I just wanted to be good in marketing. I never thought I'd be a CEO. In 2000 or 2001, I woke up one day and saw the Hindu Business Line. If somebody is on the Hindu Business Line here, thank you very much for that. And they ran an article on who do we think are the CEOs of the next decade. And my name was number one. They talked to a number of people and asked them. And they said, okay, this guy is a good guy. We think he's a CEO. That's when I thought I could be a CEO. Till then, I never thought I'd be a CEO. So that's how, it happened.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Shiv. The next question is, you mentioned careers of 30 years and 40 years. In today's world, is a career beyond 45 really possible with the way that we burn out and the kind of competition that really happens?
Actually, that's a very good question. Yes, careers of 30 years plus 40 years are entirely possible, but you need the following for that. Number one, you need emotional anchors, which is your family, your wife, your friends, to see you through tough phases in life. Second, you need a healthy life. You need health on your side. So you need to really work hard at your fitness. You need to eat the right stuff, etc. You need to have the mental energy and the stamina basis your good health. That's the second one I would take. And the third one, which is the most difficult one, is to stay relevant. My biggest challenge, I've been a CEO half my career, and I said this to, I think, the Mint interview many years ago. I said, my biggest challenge is to stay relevant. The average life of a management concept is about 14 months. So you have to be constantly on top of theory. You have to constantly apply it. You have to constantly learn from it and then move forward. So staying relevant, staying healthy, staying mentally alert, and having the energy to see through a long day, and having emotional anchors, your family, your wife, your friends, your parents, who can support you through the difficult times. These are absolutely paramount if you want to have a long career.
Thank you, Mr. Shiv. So one more question is, how important is the first job in our careers? Should we really go for a big brand behind that sits in our CV? Or should I take an unknown company where I can learn lots? It's a very difficult decision for me.
Yeah, so here's the thing. Small companies teach you a lot. There's no doubt about it. But small companies typically don't have the resources. They can teach you a lot. You have the learning. But your learning flattens after 2-3 years. Whereas large companies have processes, have the budgets to back your dreams. So it's a combination that you need to pick what suits you. It also depends on what type of a person you are. It completely, you have to, make that work for you. And I would say that by and large, you should know what you are passionate about. You're passionate about manufacturing, you're passionate about automation, you're passionate about software. Then whatever you're passionate about, go and join a top 3 company in that domain. Okay, that's how you maximize your passion. Because if you're passionate about something, when you go there, it's no longer a job, it's a hobby for you. Like marketing was a hobby for me. It was not a job. I enjoyed it. I practiced it. I learned from it. So that's what you should do. Pick your hobby, pick your passion, and join a company which is very good at it.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Shiv. I'm going to read the next question. I think I'm just reading as the student has written. Uncle Bala recommends taking up the most challenging job and not to be choosy and excel. There is also a school of thought that says join the role that interests you the most, which you also mentioned, that find a passion and join it. Being choosy helps in the longer run. Could we please know how to reconcile these two?
Yeah. So when Professor Bala says take the most challenging job, I'm sure that he means that if you have 3 offers, don't take something which is soft and don't take something which does not test you. A challenging job has to challenge you mentally and physically both. Okay, it's just not mentally. If you want to be challenged mentally, then it's quite likely you'll end up as a stockbroker or as an investment banker or a consultant. That's not, only it. When I started my career, we would go and cover 40 to 50 outlets a day. I do that even today. I'm going next week into the marketplace, and Suresh is nodding his head. In Vijayawada and Rajahmundry, where I overlapped, I've done 50 outlets a day, starting in the morning at 8 o'clock. But trust me, when you do that, no salesperson, no area sales manager, no general sales manager can ever fool you, because you know your fundamentals like that. Okay, you are able to add value. So take jobs which challenge you to the limit, both physically and mentally. That's what I'm sure he means. Okay, and I'm sure he doesn't mean anything beyond that.
Right. So I'm just going to combine two questions. You have been in so many large corporates and moved up. Does corporate really look at new entrants seriously? Do we need to make to middle management to really gain attention? Should we start out as a generalist or a specialist?
I think whenever you start as a specialist, because you cannot be a generalist when you start. Okay, you either start in sales, or you start in production on the shop floor, or you start in finance, or you start in supply chain operations, wherever you start. But as you go through the ranks, put up your hand for all the cross-functional projects. That's a very good way to learn about the business. It's also a very good way for other functions to get to know you as a young manager. And when more people get to know you, you become your own brand ambassador. Okay, and that's the way I would progress. You start with, you must have what I call rock solid skills. You need 2, 3. Let's look at it the other way. If you want to be a CEO, you need to a typical CEO, about 12 to 15 people report. Okay. If you are a CEO, you need to be good at people. You need to know, a bit about marketing. You need to know about sales. You need to know finance. Okay. You need to know supply chain. You need to know operations. At least about 6, 7 stuff you need to know very well. If you don't do that, then your team will not have respect for you. So all these areas, you must have really good working knowledge so that you can add value to people. You cannot just say, I'm a damn good sales guy, I'll become a CEO. A damn good marketer, I'll be a CEO. Or I'm a damn good finance guy, I'll become a CEO. It doesn't work like that. You need multidisciplinary skills in order to get ahead in life. So a very good CEO should have, in my book, at least 5 to 6 functions where he has a very good working knowledge and he can add value to his subordinate.
Right. Mr. Shiv, one more interesting question. What about the mistakes made in the earlier parts of our career? How does it really reflect on our careers?
Yeah, so see, everybody makes mistakes, in a career. Okay, but don't make the big ones. See, once you make a big mistake, you're dead and gone. The industry will never touch you. What are those? Anything to do with integrity, okay, is serious no. Then a bunch of companies will never touch you, come what may. Then you'll always be in a very different, set of companies, etc. Second is, never be seen as intellectually lazy or cutting corners, okay, or being a cynic. These are all big, problems when you are a young manager to middle manager. When you are a young manager, you want to grow at the fastest rate or the fastest speed. But in doing so, some people take shortcuts. When they take the shortcut and they get found out, that is really dangerous. Okay, so there is no substitute to working a career like a marathon. It is a 42-kilometer odd journey. Run the 42-kilometer at the right speed. There's no point in running 100 meters at burst, relaxing for 5 years, running another 200 meters at burst. That's not a good career. Okay, so don't do those kind of mistakes. Integrity issues, no. Intellectually lazy, no. And don't take shortcuts.
That's amazing insights, and thank you for that. And one more question, I think, Pratima, please let me know of the timing. I'm just raising this question as well.
Yeah, 5 more minutes, no worries.
Yeah. Is there a stigma associated with people who do not switch companies? But at the same time, I cannot switch too many jobs. So where do I draw a balance?
That's a very good question. I think in a future world, my viewer, so don't hold me to it and don't say, especially the media, please don't report that Shiv says don't stay in one company. That's not what my point is. I think staying in one company in a fast changing world might not give you the best leverage intellectually. Okay, that's how I would put it. I think looking at different industries is very important. Okay, because industries change, new industries are formed, etc. So, for example, take our own degrees and how they have moved. If you go back at the time of independence, civil engineering was very sought after. Okay, then after that, chemical engineering became very sought after. Then mechanical engineering became very sought after. Then electronics became very sought after. Now it's computer science. Okay, it's the same thing. Okay, so that's why I started by saying which type of industry, which type of skill. Always look at the future, be future ready. Okay, that's the kind of thing that you should be looking at. And I would say 3 to 5 years is a good enough time frame at any level in an organization for you to contribute, for you to be noticed, and for you to deliver.
Great. So one more question is, I am in culturally good company with decent learning, but still feel saturated with routines and how to overcome organizational or procedural resistance on trying out new ideas.
Yeah. So one of the things which young people always do is that they think they have more ideas, which is fair. So if you look at a corporate journey, at 25 you have 100% energy and zero experience. At 60 you have 100% experience and zero energy, unless of course you are Professor Bala. And at 42 you have the ideal intersection of energy and experience. And that's why most young CEOs get their CEO breaks when they're in their 40s, the good ones, between 40 and 42 or 43. Okay. So if you really want your voice to be heard and your idea to be, taken serious note of, then you have to put a note around it. You have to do enough homework. It's just not about talking about it. You have to flesh it out. You have to make it in the form of a 2-3 page note. And you have to gather enough evidence, customer evidence or consumer evidence or ecosystem evidence to say this has merit. If you do, and this is what many people call the thesis approach. Okay, what is the thesis of a company? What is the thesis of an idea? As long as you do that, I think more and more people will listen to you. If you just sit in a meeting and say, this is the idea I have, you don't deserve to be listened to in my book. You have to flesh it out. Even at the senior most levels, when we pitched to a board, whether it was Nokia or PepsiCo, you had to go and do your homework very thoroughly. You just can't go and tell a board, I have this idea, come give me some money. It doesn't work like that.
Thank you so much, Mr. Shiv, for so patiently answering all our questions. Thank you so much.
Shiv, I'm going to ask a question if it is all right with you.
Yes, Prof, anytime.
I generally tell people, you have some core competencies, everybody, right from the birth. So analyze by your brain, but decide by your heart. Because the brain can be manipulated and you will rationalize even there are dilemmas. But your heart cannot be manipulated. All right. Now, what do you think about that?
You're absolutely right. See, the brain is the mind and it is more the strategy. The heart is the values. That's
Right.
your true north. That is what guides you, and you should always stick to the values. When in doubt, go back to your values. Okay.
That's it.
And values is the lighthouse which should guide your career. When you're lost at sea, that lighthouse, it tells you where to go back.
Exactly. Beautiful. Thank you very much, Shiv. Really appreciate it.
I think we'll head over to Dr. Suresh Ramanathan, our Dean, who will propose the vote of thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you, Pratima. And Shiv, thank you very, very much for this absolutely magnificent and enlightening talk. As a fellow IIM Calcutta alum, it was wonderful to see you and meet you after over 30 years. And this is very different set of circumstances. But as I found myself reflecting upon my own choices, the choices that I have made in my career, there were a lot of lessons that I wish this book had been written many years ago, so that I had a better handle on how I should have approached my life and the choices that I could have made maybe a little earlier in discovering things that I was most passionate about. So there was a lot that I took away from this, and I'm sure many and all our students who are here would have got a lot out of this this beautiful talk, because each one of them, each one of the points that you made, I'm sure resonated with them completely, simply because of the fact that these are exactly the kinds of questions that each one of them is asking us every single day. And so to have answers, not just answers in the form of pat answers, but very thoughtful answers, answers that actually reflect your own journey, reflect the learnings and your experience and the wisdom that you have had in all these years, and being able to share those with our students, I'm sure they would have valued this immensely. So thank you very, very much, Shiv. This was absolutely wonderful. On behalf of Great Lakes, I would love to see you again at a time when things are safer to travel. I would love to welcome you back to campus, and hopefully we get to engage at a much greater level and in a more extended form the next time you visit Chennai. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Professor Bala, for this kind invite. I really enjoyed it. This is the first of my book sessions, guys. So thank you and all the very best.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Shiv.
Thank you so much.
We will be coming back
Yeah, thank you,
and
Professor.
we'll be in touch.
Please do.
Thanks a lot. Really, really appreciate.